With 150,000 Russian troops surrounding Ukraine, defense ministers from countries across the globe met at NATO headquarters in Brussels this week to talk about the tense situation still brewing between Russia and Ukraine. Joining us from Belgium right now is Alexandra von Nahmen. She's a Brussels bureau chief for the international German network Deutsche Welle. Alexandra, thank you so much for being here with us. So first, what do we know what NATO countries are preparing for? What would a Russian attack look like?
So, Tasmin, NATO officials told me that they are preparing for all potential options. And of course, the worst case scenario is a full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine. The Russian President Vladimir Putin could try to take the entire country or to attack Kiev. And this is really the worst case scenario. But there are also other options on the table. Putin could try to launch more cyber attacks or to stage a coup to depose the Ukrainian president and to replace him with a pro-Russian leader. And NATO officials know that they have to be ready for all those scenarios. But they also told me that they're hoping that a diplomatic solution to the Ukraine crisis can be found, and they're trying to find a solution because they told me they really want to have a meaningful dialogue with Russia.
So U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin was one of those leaders in Brussels this week, and the defense secretary said, "We will, if we must, defend every inch of NATO territory." So what does that actually mean? What will a NATO response look like if and when Russia attacks?
So the Secretary of Defense, Mr. Austin, was talking about NATO members. And this is very important to understand that Ukraine is an important partner, but not a member of the alliance. And only if a member is attacked, the defense, the collective defense clause can be invoked, meaning that an attack on a member is an attack on all allies. So in case of Ukraine, we have to see that say that it's pretty much clear that NATO is not going to war over Ukraine, but NATO allies have made it clear if there is a Russian aggression against Ukraine, they are determined to impose severe economic and political sanctions that would target Russia's financial sector, Russia's energy sector, and possibly also Russian oligarchs, those rich people who support Vladimir Putin.
And Alexandra, you bring up such a significant point because one of President Putin's demands was that he doesn't want Ukraine to become a member of NATO. And you actually spoke to NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. What did he tell you? Where does NATO stand right now on finding a political solution?
NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg made it very clear that barring Ukraine from potentially becoming a NATO member is off the table. And because, NATO is insisting on its open door policy, every independent nation can decide for themselves that whether they would like to become a NATO member or not. And NATO is rejecting this idea of spheres of influence because they are saying this is a relic of the past. Instead, the alliance is offering Russia talks about confidence building measures to make sure that there is more transparency, for instance, when it comes to military exercises or to troop movements. And as you know, the US has also offered talks about arms control and missile deployments. But the problem is that even though Russia is certainly interested in such talks, there are saying this demand to bar Ukraine from NATO is their main demand that has to be met.
So, Alexandra, I think everyone just assumes that this attack would just affect Ukraine. But could a Russian invasion set off some sort of domino effect? What could the consequences be for the rest of the world with an attack?
So many here in Europe are very concerned. If there is a war between Ukraine and Russia, we are going to see a lot of people fleeing the country. We are going to see an impact on financial markets all over the world. And many here in Europe are also concerned that this conflict could spill over further into Europe. 5 of NATO members have a border with Russia. So just imagine if there is any incident and one NATO member is getting involved, that means NATO is getting involved. So many here are very concerned, and that is why Eastern European countries, which are NATO members, are saying we need to have additional troops on the ground, and that is why NATO is considering to increase its military presence in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, a lot to keep our eyes on. DW's Brussels Bureau Chief Alexandra von Nahmen, thank you so much for being here and for your time.